Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on time management, filtering, monitoring, and troubleshooting with router limits and Cambium networks. Today we have Darren Hermans, who is Director of Product Line Management at Cambium Networks, and Skylar Walker of Router Limits. If anyone has any questions for Darren or Skylar throughout the webinar, please feel free to enter those in the questions box, and we will get to them by the end of the session. At this time, I'll pass it over to you, Darren.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you, Skylar, for joining us today. So this is Darren Hermans with Cambium Networks, and I'm joined by Skylar Walker. He's a Director of Business Development at BARC, and they've recently acquired Router Limits. I'll let him talk about that. But we're really glad to have Skylar here. He's been working with service providers now for many years on this key technology that's so important to proper time management in the home, in a way that's greatly simplified, easy to use, and it's very productive for home internet. So we start to look at this need briefly, and there we go, a little delay there on my PowerPoint. So the things that have changed in the past few weeks, we've all been impacted by this. More than a third of Americans are now working from home, and it is, as some of these authors are saying here, some of these journalists, it's a possibly stressful experiment and a stressful experience for many people working from home. What's interesting, if you think about the distributed enterprise, and we used to talk about enterprises using mission critical Wi-Fi technology, but now the distributed enterprise has moved all of that critical capacity, all that critical networking into the home, and business needs to continue that way. Schools are closed. My son's school is closed in California. The colleges are shut down, and so students are trying to find a way to make it work. We're making it work at our house, and we're doing well. My son has a nice schedule. He has about 5.5 hours a day of schoolwork that we've scheduled for him, and he works through that, and he's doing a great job. But it's challenging, right? It's challenging to juggle all of your priorities and get your work done, help your kids succeed in what they're doing. And so proper time management, having the right tools in your hand, makes that job easier. And so that's why this is such a timely webinar with Router Limits today, to talk about this technology that we can all use right now and have immediate benefit. Skylar, if you'd like, I'd like to jump right into this and not waste people's time with my introductory comments, and let you talk about Router Limits and what you bring to help us with our family time management.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties today. Actually, I always demo on my phone our application, and it's not working. And I've had some real fun the last few days with video conferencing and everything from home. So seems like the mornings are always the worst, but I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here, guys. We'll do the best we can here with what we've got. So basically, a quick introduction to Router Limits. Router Limits is a full suite of internet management tools with a strong focus around subscribers. So what we do is we focus on software that enhances the user's experience with their gateway device. And what we found is that we do the best when we partner with OEMs like Cambium, who are leading the market in home APs and bringing these out to all of the subscribers of CPE. So by enhancing that offering, we not only help the internet service provider, we also help the subscriber. I'll get to that here in just a minute. So what we've done is we've looked at what are the highest value, highest touch services that we can provide to subscribers. And we've come up with parental controls, bandwidth monitoring, and speed testing as some of the high touch. So there is an agent, a Router Limits agent, that runs on the Cambium router, and that allows the user to manipulate some settings, which we'll go through a demo here in just a moment. This is available for the 195 and the 201, and it can be updated over the air. Even if you have existing equipment out there, this can be added to it. So that's one of the really cool things about what we're showing, is this is something that you can immediately start deploying to your customers without a truck roll with just a simple over-the-air update. So at Router Limits, we focus on really helping with three main areas. The first is increasing ARPU. I know that that's kind of a buzzword. That's what everybody wants to do. And so I hope it doesn't come across as we're just trying to use every buzzword we can here. But in reality, we're always looking for value add ways to increase our ARPU. And with Router Limits, this happens in a couple of ways. There are service providers that are charging for this service or portions of it. But even more commonly, service providers are leasing or renting CPE to customers. So for say $10 a month, they're getting a router in their home that the service provider is managing for them. Now, one of the challenges that we've seen with that is that's great up front. People will take that. But as time rolls, they get a year down the road, they realize, I'm paying $10 a month for this router. What am I really getting for that? There's not a lot of visible value from that until you add something like Router Limits, where the customer's interacting with it, they feel that value, and so it's an even easier sell on that lease. Our second goal is to boost retention. Unfortunately, ISPs get a pretty bad rap. We've all seen the studies and the research surveys about how people feel about their ISP, and it's generally negative. And that's unfortunate, because we know how hard everybody works in this industry to keep people up on and connected online. And I think a lot of that goes unappreciated and unnoticed. But unfortunately for the subscriber, the only time that they really interact with their ISP is when their bill's wrong or their service is down, always negative reasons. I'm sure that you would all love a call that just said, "Hey, I was just thinking about you today. Thanks for all you do. Internet's great." But that rarely happens. And part of the reason is, I think that people don't really understand the role of ISP and everything that's going on all the time. If you ask them who their internet provider is, they'll probably say, "Oh, it's Google," or "Oh, it's Facebook," or whoever their main usage of the internet happens to be. But what we're trying to do is bring the awareness of the ISP to the front, and we do that with really branding and bringing your name out. So they're downloading an app on their phone, and they're using that, and they're seeing your name and your logo, and when their friends say, "Oh, who do you use for internet?" they're immediately jumping to you, and they're showing them all the cool things that they can do with your service through these apps. And finally, our third objective is to cut support costs. If we can help customers self-serve with some very candidly minor things that cause the majority of support calls, then we can prevent them from calling in. So not only are we keeping them around, we're also keeping them, giving them the ability that they can not be overwhelming the call center. And like I say, as we look at all of this, we're always looking for what features are these that meet these goals and have a high touch. So in recent research, we've seen that the statistics are really high around parental controls. In fact, 84% of families either have used or want to use parental controls. So I can't think of another service that is as high touch as that. I mean, we've already done voice and television, the triple play type of stuff. What's next? And I really believe that it's around these controls that we give people. Families are connected more than ever. Kids are on devices every day, and parents just don't quite know how to get a handle on that. So this is a really good opportunity. So with that, what I'd like to do is jump into a demo here. And before I go live on the demo, let me just show you some screenshots, because unfortunately, like I say, my phone, which I usually do screen mirroring from, is not working today. So we have a mobile app that you can actually have your logo in, so we can have that touch to your customers, like we mentioned. And this is this. Darren, can you see my pointer when I'm moving my mouse like this?
Yes, I can. I can. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this screen on the left, this is the main screen of the app. And we have a mobile app, and we also have a web app. So I'll be able to show you the web app here live, but I want to highlight just the mobile app here because it really is a nice looking app. Across the middle of the screen, we have this bandwidth graph, and this bandwidth graph is a real-time graph of bandwidth, and you'll see it in the live app. It's just slowly moving across. Across the left side here, we have megabits per second, which most subscribers have no idea what that means. They just know that they're paying for 30 units of internet a month or whatever it is. And across the bottom is time of day. So this updates about every 15 seconds. You're getting another bar here that shows current load on my local network. And then, of course, we interpret that for people. So we'll show a low, medium, or high down here at the bottom. I tried to make that full screen, but it didn't work. That tells them how heavy the network usage is. I can see how many devices are connected to my network. And then if I want to drill in on this, I can tap really anything. So if I tap, for example, this bandwidth graph, it's going to break down the bandwidth usage for me by device. So I can see, okay, the internet's feeling slow. I hop into my app rather than call my ISP. I see that I'm maxed out on my bandwidth here. I can tap that and it's going to show me which device is the biggest culprit. And what's great about how this sort of parlays into what we call parental controls is I can take action on that. So I can actually tap that device and I can pause it. I can shut the internet off to it. So if something's interrupting my workflow, I can immediately take control of that. As we've talked to our partners and our clients, we've learned that some of the most common support calls are, hey, my internet is slow. And when the ISP takes a look, they can usually see, say, the rooftop radio. They're delivering the full bandwidth, and it's something within the house that is actually causing that issue. But that's always a poor customer experience, unfortunately, to say, well, it's something on your side. Good luck. The customer doesn't usually believe you, and they still blame you. So being able to jump in and see that graph here is really helpful, and then they can learn which device it is. The next thing is always, hey, I'm not getting the speeds that I'm paying for. That's another common support issue. And what we found is that most of the time customers are, the real issue is that how they're testing that. So, most subscribers know how to go to speedtest.net, run a speed test there. And what they don't realize is that they're running that from their phone, which is on the opposite side of the house from the AP gateway. So they're not only testing their internet connection, they're also testing that Wi-Fi leg between the router and their device. And there's always going to be some amount of degradation there on that speed. So, they might test out at 22 and they pay for 30. And so they're not really happy because they feel like, the ISP is pulling a fast one on them. So by introducing the speed test feature, we've helped eliminate that. You can run a speed test right from the app. You can request a speed test, but it's actually going to run it from the gateway, from the router, back to the cloud. So you're going over that, really stable, predictable connection. We're not involving Wi-Fi within the home and dealing with interference or distance or even poor client devices that may just be overloaded or older. And so these results really come in spot on for what it's supposed to be. We have a lot of features around this as well that can be enabled. You can automatically test periodically. The user can even set that up, so it will actually graph that over time, as you can see. you can delay that for a usage threshold. So if bandwidth is over a certain amount used within the home, the speed test will delay. That way, if they're gaming or watching 4K video, whatever, they're using their connection, the speed test is just going to kick off in the background and cause troubles. And this is a good time to mention too that all of these features can be enabled and disabled with subscriber plans. So some people don't like to provide their customers with certain features, like even speed test sometimes. And so it's always possible to turn those off for customers if needed for certain customers. So we can have different features for different subscribers. And then finally, I guess going back here to this home screen, you can see across the top here, I've got my cute stock photo family. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit. You can actually take all of your online devices and you can put them into groups. So with that, let me jump over here to the web, and I appreciate your patience on that. I've never had a problem until today with sharing my screen, so that's unfortunate. I couldn't give you a live demo of that, but I will give you a live demo of the web portal here, which is very similar. And we maintain both. We have an app, and we also have a web app. We found that it's actually pretty split. I would think that usually in these applications, it tends to lean heavier nowadays towards mobile, but for whatever reason, a lot of people really like to use the web interface. So we have both of these available. So this is the web interface. You can see that I'm showing you a devices and groups screen here. It has detected, the system, once it's enabled on the router, is going to automatically detect all of the devices on the network. It's going to try and figure out the best it can what those devices are. Ideally, we're pulling a host name. If not, we can get the vendor, we can interrogate the devices directly and see if they'll tell us who they are via Bonjour or other protocols, and we present them to the user here. By default, they all populate within this guest group. So any new device that connects to my network is going to pop up into this list. And then I can create as many what we call groups as I desire. And they can be by person, like dad, or they could be by a demographic like kids or teens. And I can simply drag and drop devices between these. You'll notice that they have a little green dot next to them. That means that they're online. This is a demo account, and after a while, devices will actually age out if they haven't been connected for a long time. So you can see I actually have 2 offline devices here that sort of got hidden. So red means that they're offline. I can come in and give any one of these a different name if I want to remember what it is a little better. Maybe I have several Apple TVs and I want to have, label them for this one's my bedroom, this one's my family room. And then I can actually do what we call pause these devices right from the screen. So if I want to say, shut off internet access for this PlayStation, I can click this and immediately cut off the internet access to it. We call that pausing. I can do that by device, or I can do that for an entire group. And that is indefinite until I come back and turn that back on. Those are shut off. Very, very popular feature. This one directly plays into what I was talking about earlier about high touch features. I'm a parent. I want my kids to come to dinner, or maybe they're misbehaving, or I want them to focus on something. I can jump on my phone. I can pause their device, and they're cut off. One of the really cool things about router limits is that we actually cover every angle. So if you pause a kid's device, for example, from the Wi-Fi, they're immediately going to jump off of Wi-Fi, jump over to data. Most people have a family data plan nowadays, or they have the neighbor's Wi-Fi password, so they jump over that. They're just going to completely bypass your system and your controls. And that is the largest gaping hole in parental control on a gateway device, on a network router. So don't worry, we've got that covered. We actually have apps for iOS and Android that can be installed, and they run in the background, and they will enforce all of the same limits, monitoring, everything that we have here on that device, no matter where it is. If it's at home, on the Wi-Fi, or if they decide to jump to data, or to school, or grandma's house, whatever, that device is still covered under the umbrella here. And when that happens, this little green dot actually turns into a little globe, and you can see that device is essentially always connected no matter where it goes. You'll notice about our interface, things are very simple, lots of white space. That's very much on purpose. I'm kind of a data guy. I'm a software engineer. I love to see data. We've learned through a lot of user testing and user feedback that the more data you show, the more confused your users get. So we've really tried to make this very easy for anybody to use. Now, that doesn't mean I can't get more information about these. I can always click. There's always somewhere I can click to learn more. So if I click in here, I can actually see the host name of devices. I can see the vendor, which doesn't populate in this demo. MAC address, IP address. Check out that IP address on my local network. That's the clear dead giveaway. This is a demo. And I could see when this device was first seen on my network, which is really handy. You know, when was this device, when did this come online? And if I go to an offline device, I can actually see when it was last seen as well. So first seen comes on my network, last seen. So the last time this product was on my network was October 9th, 2019. So it's been a while, and that's why the system has hidden it here. So that's pretty handy for getting some more info. Okay, with that said, I want to show you now limits, which is by far my favorite feature and one of our most popular things. So on any group, I can actually set up limits, and these are done on a group by group basis. And by the way, I also want to highlight that when a user first comes into any screen, they're going to have these nice little educational pop-ups that teach them about what they're seeing, how to do it. You know, sometimes there's some little animations. It could be really handy for the user to learn the system. And anytime they can click up here and they can see those again. But there are some educational tutorial things to go through. So what we're looking at here is the limit screen. Like I mentioned, this is done by group. So I can have different limits for different groups. You can see here, even on the guest group for new devices connecting in, I can set up some baseline rules, or as we call them, limits. So for the kids, you'll see I have a schedule here, and it's a nice, big, simple schedule. Across the left, I've got the day of week, and across the top, I've got time of day. I can set up different rules for different times of day and day of week. So for example, I want my kids to be off devices and going to bed at 10 o'clock. So at 10, Monday through Sunday, I want the internet to shut off, and I want it to stay off all night until 6 a.m. You know, if my kids want to get up at 6 a.m. and surf the internet, more power to them. I don't think that that's going to ever happen, but you never know. So very simply, I've now just shut off the internet. It's scheduled to shut off for the kids. During this default time, I can have other rules. So scrolling down, you'll see we have a lot of options here. We've got restrictions, we've got exceptions. Now, technical terms here would be things like blacklist and whitelist. Those don't test very well with users, and they end up throwing their hands up in the air going, I'm not technical, I can't do this. So once again, really trying to speak their language and relate to them. So restrictions, it really goes from kind of broad brush strokes down to more fine painting as you go down. So right off the top of the bat, I can just block everything if I want to during that time, which is equivalent to this internet blocked rule that we just created for the nighttime. The next one is categories. Categories have millions of websites behind them. So, you know, this is something that's always evolving, always growing. The internet's, you know, every day is a new place. There's always new sites. So we're keeping up on that. We even have web crawlers and things in the background that are keeping track of all that. So you'll see I can block things like explicit content, proxies, which are include VPNs, popular proxies and VPNs that people use to get around systems like this, and maybe I'm going to block threats as well, which would be any kind of sites with viruses, malware, just nefarious content in general. So now I have those categories enabled during this default time. The next one here is what we call sites, and this is really popular sites and apps. You'll see things like Fortnite and Clash of Clans. I can get a little bit more specific about what I want to block. And these are also more advanced than just, you see Facebook in here and you're like, okay, that's real hard, just blocking Facebook.com. But we actually are pretty diligent about blocking all of the different ways to access these sites and apps. So whether that's content delivery networks, APIs, websites, mobile versions, all those things. So the last I checked, our system actually had a catalog of 150 different ways to access Facebook. And a really good example of that's YouTube. We had a church who was trying to filter YouTube from their building because people would come, they connect to the Wi-Fi and they would stream YouTube, and it was killing the bandwidth. And I guess that's what you do when you go to church, you watch YouTube. But they were really struggling with that on the bandwidth side, so they blocked it. And what they told us was that everybody figured out pretty quickly they could just download the YouTube app, and it still worked. So we really go very comprehensive on this and block all of the different ways to access it. And then you can set up specific pages you can block. A little bit of another example here. The really powerful things about this is that you can create what we call custom limits. So I can come in and I can actually create like if I can type today, a homework limit. And I can pick a color, a nice school bus yellow there. And I can set this anytime I want. So I can come in and actually just say, you know what, from 3 to 5 on Monday through Friday is going to be homework time. During homework time, I'm going to have different rules than I normally have. And this gets really powerful. You'd be really surprised. I've had people show me their account. They're like, oh, I just love my router limits. Check this out. And they pull up the screen and it's like a rainbow. I mean, they've just created, a time for everything. They've got a dinner time. They've got a bedtime. They've got weekend times. They've got school times. I mean, they just really customize this. And you can see the power of the tool is really just to tailor to whatever they want to set it up to do. There's really no defined like preset here. They can really customize it however much or as little as they like. So for example, during homework time here, maybe I don't know what my kids are doing to waste time, but I know what they should be doing during homework time. So I'm going to set up a block everything restriction. So during this time, everything's blocked, but I'm going to have some exceptions. And one of the really cool things about exceptions is that it mirrors the restrictions. I have just as much power in my exceptions as I do in my restrictions. So I can do things like allow whole categories or sites. So, let's get specific here. I want to add a domain for their school. We're going to allow their school site during homework time. But because I'm such a cool, super hip dad, I'm also going to allow them to listen to Pandora during homework time. So everything's going to be blocked except for their school site and Pandora during just this homework time. You see how this can be really customizable. There's a lot of different ways you can make this work. Okay, so the last thing here are what we call options. I'll just go back over this default. Options provide a couple other settings that we can enforce. The first one being safe search. Safe search will actually filter search results for Google, Bing, and DuckDuckGo. That includes content like explicit content, dangerous content, really trying to create kind of a kid-safe environment. It will even filter images from image searches. So if this is turned on, you can actually go and search for, you know, really anything that you want to try, and it's only going to return really kind of family-friendly results. So this only works on Google, Bing, and DuckDuckGo. So you can understand that, like, okay, there's a workaround right there, just going to use a different search engine. So we kind of have this, one of the really common questions is, how do I just create like a kid-safe, family-safe internet for my family? So we actually have a suggestion here. We call these templates, where you can apply these and it will kind of give people a starting point. So if I enable this, what we call basic protection, this is a really good starting point for kind of a family-friendly internet. You'll see we've enabled categories of explicit content, proxies. We're trying to keep people from working around the system, threats, and then we've also blocked all search engines, which seems like it's a pretty wide swath to cut there, but we've made exceptions for Google, Bing, and DuckDuckGo because we're able to enforce safe search for those. So these few filters alone right here really create quite a comprehensive protection for kids, which is one of the really common use cases here. Next, we have YouTube restricted mode, which is very similar. It filters YouTube for content that may not be appropriate, whether that's violence or sexual content. That applies not only to what you can find on YouTube, but suggested videos, all of the stuff that pops up afterwards, which is a great tool. And finally, we have this block unknown traffic. This is something that we created specifically in response to the small percentage of kids that are super savvy, technical savvy, like I was. We occasionally have kids that are setting up their own VPNs. It's an anonymous IP. They set up their own VPN server somewhere, or a Tor browser, and they're essentially bypassing any kind of stuff like this that you have. This proxies VPN filter, this will filter out the 99% of kids who are trying to, Google search, how do I get around this? And they're downloading something. Those are VPNs and proxies and services that we know about. We can prevent them where possible with this. But you always have that the couple that kind of figure out the way around it. So what block unknown traffic does, I call this the Hail Mary or the nuclear option. This will block every single packet that router limits cannot identify. So if we don't know what it is, it's not going anywhere. And it's a little bit heavy-handed, but it works really well. So that's why I call it kind of the nuclear option, and it comes with a little warning when you turn it on. It works very effectively, but sometimes it will block unintended things. You'll have some false positives, like say VoIP phones. When we tested it on our employees as guinea pigs, their phones stopped working, which is an easy fix. You come over to the devices, you put them in their own group, and you don't apply any limits to those. But it also blocks things like peer-to-peer chat. Anything that's going peer-to-peer like that is going to get cut off because we don't know what that is. So once again, works really well. We kind of recommend it as a second tier option. I can tell you that everybody who's called in and said, oh, my kids have figured out a way to get around this, we've told them to turn on this block unknown traffic, and we've never heard from them again. So it works really well. Excuse me. Okay, last thing I'll kind of highlight here for you is the history page. You can see we actually track all of the sites that are being accessed by device. So I can see that in my kids group, Sarah's Kindle, she's looking at Porsche.com at this time. This is my local time here, so this just barely happened. And I can click this. If I don't know what this site is, I can click it and I can get more information. So I can see, what is this site? There's a little description for me. And you'll see this very verbose explanation. This is once again another more evidence of user testing and feedback. I like data, like I mentioned, we used to kind of show a little table here, but the support calls would come in and they'd say, well, and then what happened here? Did my kids see this or not? So we made it very verbose. It's basically saying, at this day, on this day, at this time, this website was accessed by this device, and it was in this group, and this was the limit. And you can click any of these and go make changes. And that completely eliminated any type of concern or question over this. And then there's things I can do about it. I mentioned we have web crawlers that are categorizing things. I can also suggest a categorization. So we take user feedback. I can block it in the future if I want. I don't want this to be allowed. Any of these that were blocked, I can go in and click this. So okay, that one's a little Verizon. I can see that it was blocked because the internet blocked limit was enforced, which is that one we were just playing with a little bit. So I can get a lot of information here. I can also drill down. So if I just want to see, I just want to see what people tried to go to, but what was blocked, and it will only show me those. And I can drill down further by going to a certain group or a certain device, certain time. Once I get close to the time, it's just an infinite scroll here, so I can kind of very easily, move about and see this history. I'll show you these screens really quick, I guess, because we didn't show the demo. Going back to the dashboard here, you'll see this is the real-time bandwidth graph. You can see it's slowly moving, showing bandwidth. This is the speed test. I can request a speed test here from the web portal as well. It's going to track it over time. And one of the great things about router limits being a software solution is we've abstracted the hardware just a little bit. So if, for example, a router fails or you upgrade a router, this can be an uninterrupted service for your customers. So the router that's paired to the account can be changed. You can actually replace the router for any reason with a new one that has router limits built in, and the customer won't have any change on their side. They'll still see all their devices, their limits, their history, everything remains. So this being kind of a cloud hybrid solution with the hardware allows for that. We're not tied directly to the hardware, which is really nice. Not only for access, I can open my app from anywhere and access this, but also for that ability of continuity of service, even if a router needs to be OEM'd or upgraded for any reason. A couple other things I just wanted to highlight for you too, really quick, is that we actually have a portal on the back end for the service provider as well, where you can actually see these screens look exactly the same. You can drill into any one of your subscribers' accounts and see their devices and their limits. You can provide support to them that way. You can also see every speed test they've run. We do have some testing tools where you can test periodically, delay for certain utilization. You can test just one if you just want to test latency or upload or download or all three. You can also help them, provide the support to them. I lost my train of thought there for a minute. But the only thing that's not available to that portal is the history. That we do deem that private information, so you can't see that from the Pro portal. But that's where you can provision new accounts and things. They're all API based. It can be tied into any other system that you need to. And we hope to have a tighter integration with CN Maestro at some point, which that's what I was trying to share with you. With that said, one other thing I'd like to just highlight here, and then throw it back to you, Darren, and we can go to questions or share a couple things from your side. Router Limits was recently acquired by a company called Bark Technologies, and you can see their website at bark.us. This is really exciting for us. This is a company that's really heavily focused on artificial intelligence. So as we've looked at, what's next for router limits, and even just for users utilizing parental controls, it's a daunting task. to keep up with this stuff. You know, parents, they don't know what their kids are using. They don't know when they should be concerned or when they shouldn't. We've built great tools to sort of build some parameters and do some monitoring, but you have to be pretty proactive. You know, if you're going to go in and be checking, for example, this history page, you know, as a parent, this is a lot to do, and I already have enough on my plate. So what Bark's done really well is they don't have the features that Router Limits has, which is why this is such a great marriage. They focused on monitoring messaging, monitoring content of platforms. So I may decide in my limits for my kids that, you know, either I'm going to block or allow, say, Snapchat. If I block it, it's cut off. If I allow it, that's really the extent of it. I don't know what's going on, you know, in Snapchat, unless I'm taking my kid's phone and actually looking at that. Bark monitors that. So they'll monitor Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, even emails and text messages. All of that's fed through an artificial intelligence engine, and it detects things like suicide ideation, sexual content, cyberbullying, anything that is of concern like that will then be escalated to parents. So parents can't just see any message they want. I mean, that's really just going through the AI, and then it's, you know, if the AI decides that's not something that's important, it goes away. Parents can't just spy on their kids, and we're really trying to build this balanced privacy between parents and kids. But when there is a situation, it will get alerted to the parent and shared. So by bringing these platforms together, we're really creating what we call a comprehensive intelligence platform, a parental intelligence platform. And Bark's statistics speak for themselves. There have been 16 school shootings prevented because arrests were made based on kids planning things, unfortunately, on messaging, and those were detected. 33,000 suicidal situations were detected, and we have letters from parents and even from kids saying, you know, thank you, I wasn't able to talk to my parents, or the parents say we had no idea, and we're able to prevent these things before they happened. So really excited about all that's going to come right now. Obviously, you know, combining two companies, this is really new. That's a big undertaking, but this is a lot of excitement to come later this year as we bring these together. So Darren, with that, let me throw it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Skylar. I really appreciated listening to that. I really like that limits page you've got that you have there with the color-coded graphs. I think that's a really key thing. You were talking about how important it is to aggregate these views, all this massive data collection, and aggregate it and then show it in a way that's easy to follow. I think that's really important. It's important for me too. I'm a tech guy, but I don't want to spend all my day you know, managing something this complex. Yeah, I want it to be simple. I just want it to work. I want you to aggregate that data for me, and I want you to tell me what I need to know. And so I really appreciate that design. It's good. Okay, so do I have control again? Okay, excellent. I do. All right, let me jump right into just a couple more slides, then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. So I'm going to recommend these top two, and then a third access point coming up. Of course, Cambium has other home routers, but let me tell you why I'm recommending these three, particularly in this time when we are all working from home. We're not just working from home, our kids are going to school from home, and there's so much demand on that home network. So with that demand, I'm highly recommending that if you are still using 2.4 gigahertz single radio 802.11n, that you get an upgrade. You get an upgrade to dual band 11AC, get into the 5 gigahertz type of networking. The 2.4 gigahertz band, you know, folks, that was the first Wi-Fi that was literally launched in 1996, and it has been improved over the years. But it's still, the fundamentals of the 2.4 gigahertz band are still just limited by physics, and the physics of RF propagation, the physics of the band width, the width of the band in 2.4 gigahertz, it just makes it not suitable for the type of networks that we need to use in our homes today for work, for education, and for entertainment. So upgrade to dual band, get into the 5 gigahertz spectrum. This will dramatically improve the performance inside your home and the experience you have. And then adding router limits on top of that gives you that nice, easy control. So the R195W that was launched last October, turns out it's very high performance. It's turning out to be a fantastic little access point, very, very low cost, but high capacity, high performance, good coverage, excellent coverage pattern, about 30% better than the R201. R201 is still the workhorse. It's the heavy lifter in the portfolio. It does everything you need it to do, including having power out for the Cambium module. And then coming up this summer, we're releasing an internal version of the R201, kind of combining the best of both. In the R195P is going to combine the best of both into a new form factor and a new access point. So keep an eye on these to improve your performance. This is the way it typically looks when it's deployed. Service provider uses Cambium fixed wireless to deliver broadband to the home. They put a little antenna on top of the house on the outside, a very small form factor antenna, bring a cable down inside the house, and then use a residential router to distribute inside the home. And as Skylar mentioned, most of the issues that service providers find are not on that fixed wireless broadband, they're inside the home. And so that's why it's so important to get the right hardware access point and the right software that runs it, and the right software that gives you the controls you need. Okay, that's it for our presentation today. Olivia, do we have any questions we could address?
Hi, Darren. We have a few questions so far. So the first one is, where can we get router limits?
Well, Skylar, I'll answer a little bit of that, and if you want to jump in, please go ahead and do so. So router limits is sold by Cambium service provider partners, and so you can get it from them. You can talk to those folks, talk to your service provider, ask them for it, and they can hook you up.
The next question is, which Cambium Networks routers support router limits?
All of them do. We have more than the 3 that I showed. The older ones also support it, but again, for reasons of RF propagation, I'm highly recommending that you stick with the R195 and the R201.
Is Cambium seeing a change in broadband with more people working from home?
Yes, we are, and we've been monitoring the situation with our partners globally, not just in the United States. Of course, Italy was one of the first countries to institute the shelter-in-place orders in northern Italy, and those wireless broadband partners over there are seeing a dramatic increase in the broadband usage in their home networks. YOLO, which is a premier wireless broadband provider in Italy, they routinely hit the top of the list for performance on the streaming services. Streaming services report dashboards like Netflix. They actually report that YOLO has the highest performance, even higher performance than the fiber operators. And YOLO is a Cambium fixed wireless service provider. They're seeing a dramatic increase across the United States. We're seeing dramatic increases as well. Some providers have said that their delay time to turn up new services and improve the performance in the homes is now doubled from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. They're trying to get the backlog. So there's lots of backlog, there's lots of interest. The mission critical network is moving into the home, and we're seeing a big dramatic effect.
Skylar, I saw this other question pop up into the questions box. So there was a question that asked, does the history detail work even if incognito mode is on?
Yeah, great question. So it does work with incognito mode. And there's also another question I saw that asked about, like, what about applications or games? And the answer is yes. So really any domains that are being accessed by any device on the network are going to get picked up in that history. And that's the best we can do from the network level. which there are sometimes some background things that get picked up. We have a noise filter. We try and filter those out when it's like a background update or something. But even all that is being picked up within that history.
Yeah, remember, folks, when on incognito mode, that's all that's doing is setting a preference on your browser so that the search company, Google or Bing or whatever search company you're using, so that they're not keeping a record of it. But the packets are still on the network, right? The packets are still there, and they can still be monitored.
That looks like all the questions for now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the setting this up for us, Olivia. And Skylar, big thanks to you for coming. I'm going to be following up with you after this because I need some help in my house.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Real pleasure to be here with you guys today. And once again, thanks for your patience during some of the. Of course, my phone screen pops up now on the computer, but thanks for being patient.
All right.